and he has a distinguished military history. Jeff, and his speech entitled Lieutenant Rufenacht, you need to return to Fort Hood immediately. So please welcome Speaker number 1, Jeff Rufenacht.
Nobody is more disappointed than me this morning that Jim Keller is not here. I kind of set all this up a year ago. He told me, he said, Jeff, I'm going to be going to my last reunion of World War II. This was last August, and he said when he came back, that was going to be the last time they met, so he said he was going to collect his thoughts, and sometime in September, a year ago, he would present his reflections of his service in World War II. So, when I got a call from him at about, well, it was Tuesday night, I called him back and we spoke Wednesday morning, and he said, I'm not feeling well enough, I'm not going to be able to make it. And he did say, please tell people, I don't want phone calls, I don't want letters, so please don't do that. But he said, I'm not going to be able to make it. And I immediately said, well, I'm not speaking. I'm not speaking about Desert Storm, I'm not speaking about the military unless Jim speaks. I sent an email to speakers number 3 and 4 and let them know what was going on, and they both wrote me back and they said, you know what, the club is expecting it, and I've been gone close to the past month, and I had yet to receive our president's email about our much anticipated military theme. So they wrote me back individually and each said, we're going to speak on our military subjects. I said, okay, I'm a team player. That's all about the military, so I'll speak on the subject as well. But I really do look forward to hearing Jim speak. That was the only reason I was going to speak about the military today, because that was his agreement. He said, if you'll speak, and if we can get a couple other guys that have been in the military that have served in wartime to speak, I'll go ahead and speak about World War II. He constantly, if you know Jim, he downplays his service. He downplays, like many of the greatest generation do. We're just doing what we're supposed to do. I was just one person, so I look forward to hearing his speech. I was on AOL.com the other day. That's my home page, only because that's how it came from the manufacturer. And I never reset it. And so now I have a little ritual where I eat my oatmeal and I flip through and see what's going on in the world according to AOL.com. And I came across an interesting story about a 19-year-old soldier from Desert Storm and a 13-year-old pen pal who reunited years later. And just this year, he's 38, she's 32, and they just got married. Wow. And it brought me back, it made me begin to reflect, to think about the classes that wrote me while I was in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. A first grade class from Idlewild, and I've got a picture there, and please don't pass it around because I don't want people reading during my speech. But going and visiting them, a third grade class from my elementary alma mater, Bear Lake Elementary School, a 7th grade class, and I still sometimes wear this t-shirt going and working out, things like that. They signed the back. From CMS, whoever CMS is, and I'm sorry to say I can't think of what middle school that might be, maybe Castleberry, I don't know. I don't know what CMS is. But I remember these guys, my brother's 11th grade American history class. And you know, it was a chance for the nation to vindicate itself from what I only read about was horrendous treatment by some of the returning Vietnam veterans. And probably well-meaning people that didn't understand how to distinguish between opposing the war and opposing people who fought in that war. And I believe we have since learned the lesson, because I sure felt the difference when I was in Desert Storm. But I do remember running the Marine Corps Marathon in 1988 and in DC, and running along, and at one point out of the blue there were 4 or 5 people there, protesters, and they were yelling, and they yelled at me. Somebody looked me in the eye and yelled, "Baby killer." And I thought, wow, maybe this is just a small iota of a taste of what guys like Terry and his compatriots in that era must have gone through from an ungrateful nation. a hostile nation. And so I felt very blessed to have 4 different classes writing me on a regular basis, and it was a wonderful thing to be able to come back and speak to those classes, visit them, and show my appreciation. And we all felt that. We were flooded with these 2-inning soldier letters. I spoke about Desert Storm back in '05. Some of you may remember it. I remember it mostly because at the 2-minute break, I was dashing into the bathroom to change into my fatigues and come in and then report in for my speech and speak to you all as though you were members of my platoon. And we were sitting on the tarmac, the airstrip there in Saudi Arabia, waiting to fly back, and I was talking to you about a job well done. But I remember the build-up too. I remember being a lieutenant, a young second lieutenant, brand new in Fort Hood, Texas, visiting my girlfriend in Manhattan for what I thought was going to be a week. And she was working in Manhattan just off of Wall Street for Prudential Reinsurance. And I remember riding mass transit into town with her, and then I was seeing the sights during the day. And I love, anybody like chocolate croissants? I love chocolate croissants. So I went into the Wall Street bakery and bought, what else, a Wall Street Journal. And I remember opening the paper that first day, that Wednesday morning, and it said President Bush to send 25,000 troops to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And I thought, okay. The next day, creature of habit, I'm back in there again, 50,000. The next day, 100,000. I read the article word for word that day. I thought, they're going to call me up. I know they are. And that evening, that Friday evening, my 3rd day of my week-long trip up there, we traveled around Manhattan, and this boat, it was a party boat that her company had set aside, having this big celebration, and got back to her place at about 1 in the morning, and she hit her answering machine because there was a message in it that said, Lieutenant Rufenacht, you need to return to Fort Hood immediately. And I'll tell you the rest whenever Jim Kelly speaks.